This is Manhattan College. I'm Kreshna Majstorovic, along with Lena, Colin, and Dorian as our team members, and Dr. Naragi, Amin, and Atepi as our faculty advisors who helped us a ton. So Manhattan College is a college located in the Bronx section of New York City, but the campus faces the challenges of limited open area for solar panels. Due to the urban setting, there are a few shaded unobstructed rooftop areas in New York City that are suitable for large-scale solar farms. This poses a challenge for the implementation of renewable energy sources on the campus, as solar panels require direct sunlight to generate electricity efficiently. While there are potential solutions such as using smaller or more efficient solar panels, or exploring off-site solar farms, these might not be as practical or cost-effective as large on-site installations. Despite this challenge, we remain committed to exploring sustainable energy options and reducing its environmental footprint. Here you can see in the figure to the right, the aerial view of Broadway parking reveals an unused rooftop area that was ideal for solar panel implementation. The rooftop is not shaded, but the neighboring structures the rooftop is not shaded by surrounding structures and receives direct sunlight from sunrise to sunset during sunny days on all 4 seasons. This makes it a prime location for harnessing the power of the sun and generating clean energy. Overall, this rooftop area of the Broadway parking lot presented a unique opportunity for sustaining energy generation.
Now, as you could see on the previous slide, the whole rooftop wasn't available due to some structures on the roof, such as like lighting fixtures and such as that. So we ended up using a 74 meter by 35 meter area of the rooftop on the right here, as you can see. And you can also see that the building has an orientation azimuth angle of 20 degrees west from the south. Now, ideally, to get the total amount of solar radiation, you would want it pointed 0 degrees to the south, but later on in the presentation, we'll go over why it's actually good for our purposes, that it does have a slight westward orientation. So the first thing we did before using the Aurora software was we developed our own in-house program. The first thing we did was to obtain an API key to use for the NREL database. And with that, we developed a program to download all this data into Excel. So as you can see by the year, it says 2008.5, but in reality, we actually downloaded 20 years of solar data for a typical meteorological year and averaged that down to 1 year. So it was from about the late 90s to a couple years ago, actually. So we downloaded the year, the diffuse horizontal irradiance, the global horizontal irradiance and the direct normal irradiance, the wind speed, temperature, which can affect the effectiveness of the solar panel. And while we can calculate the beta angle directly through use of equations, there's also a much simpler way to calculate it by using the zenith angle, which we were also able to obtain. And all of these blue columns we obtained directly from the database, and all of the columns in white you can see are calculations we used from governing equations. So using this data, plugging in all the governing equations to find the total irradiation, the incident angle and all that, we were able to come out to 1,710 kilowatts per meter squared, which doesn't mean much on its own, but we have to take into account the roof area, which we'll do on the next slide, as well as a couple of other things such as panel shading. And we plugged in the, oh, sorry, 1 second. So we plugged in the latitude, the longitude, because it was applied, all the data was applied to this situation. We also plugged in a standard reflectivity of 0.2. And although it doesn't show it on this slide, we use the 20 degrees westward azimuth angle. And plugging that into the Excel solver, we were able to get an alpha angle or an inclination angle for the panel of ideally 33 degrees.
Due to limited spaces, we had to optimize the spacing between all the rows of solar panels. So since there is self-shading from one walls to one another, when the panels are at an angle above horizontal, there may be some distance between the rows of the panel. So we determined to prevent shading of the first row to the second one, an optimum distance through 3 different calculations. An optimum distance between 2 rows of panels should be at least 2.85 meters to minimize the shading and allow enough space between 2 panels to be able to rank between 2 rows. So considering that we have an available roof area of 74 meters by 35 meters and a front panel inclination angle of 33 degrees and row panel equal to 2.85 meters, we have determined that 360 conventional solar panels could be placed on the on the roof. So with this number of solar panels, we have an approximate annual energy of 227 megawatt was calculated in our own house program.
So while we had results that we believe to be pretty accurate from our own program, we wanted to compare it to the Aurora Solar because our program used a database from NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and we wanted to compare that to Aurora. So we inputted the same parameters, the same building. We inputted the 2.85 meters of interpanel spacing to minimize shading, and of course the tilt angle of 33 degrees. We also included walkways to allow for maintenance, ease of installation, things like that. The only issue that came up with this was that we could not find the same exact panel area on Aurora that we used for our calculations. And since we could not use the same interpanel spacing calculations when applying it to different panel dimensions, we had to use a correction factor, which we'll go over on the next slide. So as you can see, this is the panel we chose on the figure to the right, which has smaller dimensions of 0.992 meters times 2 meters, which while we're considering the same amount of panels, since the area per panel is smaller, we're going to get an overall total smaller area. And considering this, we get a total of 193.6 megawatt hours annually. So to correct for this, since you can see in the figure on the right, above and a little bit to the right of the panel system, there's a bit of extra space. So we can correct for the smaller panel area by just dividing the 2 panel areas and then multiplying the amount we calculated. So when you do that, 2.125 meters squared divided by 1.984 meters squared, multiply that by the 193.6 megawatt hours we found in the previous slide, we come to a corrected area considering the panel area we used in the original calculations with the same number of panels on the same roof. We come out to 207 megawatt hours.
So once our model was finalized on Aurora software, we were able to add inverters. This allowed us to compare the annual production of energy along with the energy offset with 2 programs, Aurora and PV Watts. The system that we are comparing is a 138.6 kilowatt system that has 360 panels connected with 110 kilowatt inverters. From Aurora, it states that our system will produce about 182,630 kilowatt hours and have an offset of 182.6 megawatt hours. The months with the highest levels of production are May and August. As for PV Watts, the annual production of energy will be about 193,595 kilowatt hour with an energy offset of 193.6 megawatt hour. July would be the month with the highest level of production. The reason for the difference between the 2 softwares is due to the fact that Aurora takes into account different factors when calculating energy production. So Aurora Solar is custom to one's roof and includes shading from trees and other parts of your house or a neighbor's house. Therefore, this makes Aurora more accurate than PV Watts. PV Watts just uses the address given or a general zip code and does not account for shading. So the energy yield for this system is about 1,318 kilowatt hour per kilowatt peak with a performance ratio of 0.855. Aurora Solar gives information where energy is lost as seen on the figure on the right. The annual irradiance starts at 1,682 kilowatt hour per square meter, and once environmental factors such as tilt, shade, and incident angle are added, the new irradiance is 1,538 kilowatt hour per square meter. The next is PV conversion, which leads us to have a DC value of 213,503 kilowatt hours. And then once more environmental factors along with DC to AC conversion, inverter clipping, and the system availability factor lead to us to have the final amount of energy produced by the system to be 182,630 kilowatt hour. You can go to the next slide. So there are 3 models in our final comparison. The first one is the one Manhattan College created. The second one is Aurora Solar with no area modification. And the third one is Aurora Solar with the area modification. All 3 models have 360 panels, and our model, along with the first Aurora Solar model, both have a total panel area of 765 square meters. The third model has a lower total panel area of 714 square meters. The total energy offset declines throughout each model. Starting off with our model, it has 227 megawatt hours energy offset, and then goes down to 207.4 megawatt hours with the Aurora model with no area modification. Finally, it ends off with 193.6 megawatt hours with the Aurora model with the area modification.
So the main objective of this solar plant is to shave the peak demands of electricity on the campus, especially during the summer with the AC. So the figure you can see on the screen is shows the variations of solar irradiation on the panel versus solar time and panel based on the clear sky model during late July afternoons. So the main period where the peak demand is the highest on the campus. So in this figure, solar panel azimuth angle is varied from 0, so southward orientation, to 90 degrees, so westward orientation. And the tilt angle is then determined for maximal annual solar irradiation. So as shown in this figure, the best solar azimuth angle to yield the high solar power during summer afternoons with good overall annual power generation is obviously 20 degrees westward.
So typical buildings in New York City, including those at Manhattan College, experience a peak in electrical energy consumption during summer afternoons. To respond to this spike in demand, power companies often need to bring in additional power generating capabilities. Unfortunately, this is typically done through the use of gas turbines or diesel engines, which are mostly or both cost effective or costly and high in carbon footprint. The added cost of additional power generation is passed on to the customers to the addition of peak demand charge. And you can see this in the figure here on below. And this is for a different building, RLC, on our campus as well. This program was generated through software that's unique to the building that calculates or shows the energy consumption the building uses throughout the day and throughout the year. And you can see it mostly in the summer times from May to the end of August or the beginning of September is higher. The orientation of the solar panels, which are positioned at 20 degrees westward, means that they can generate more power during the summer afternoons when demand is highest. This makes solar power an attractive alternative to the traditional power generation methods during peak demand hours. Furthermore, the use of battery storage allows for the storage of energy which demand is low, and the use of storage energy when demand peaks. This can help reduce the need for additional power generation and further the lower carbon footprint associated with energy consumption. By taking the average of solar, the average advantage of the solar power and battery storage technologies, Manhattan College can reduce its reliance on traditional power generation methods and contribute to a more sustainable future. So the estimated aggregate project cost for the solar panel installation is around $302,367. While this may be a significant investment for the Manhattan College There are potential sources for funding that could help offset the cost. One of those is NY CERTA, which offers grants and incentives for the implementation of clean energy projects in New York State. The college administration is also actively looking into the possibility of obtaining funding for these sources and implementing the solar panel project. By pursuing these funding opportunities, the college may be able to reduce the overall cost of the project and make it more financially feasible. Additionally, this installation of solar panels aligns with the college's commitment to sustainability and reduce its environmental impact. Overall, while the initial cost of the project may seem daunting, the potential benefits of clean energy and reduced reliance on traditional power generation methods make it a worthwhile investment. With the possibility of funding from sources like NCERTA.
All right, and
NYCERTA,
not to interrupt, but we did reach our 15-minute mark.